If you've ever known anybody that's in service to self, then you will know just how problematic it is to be around them, to work with them, to be friends with them, and especially to be partners with them. And what happens is that in minor service to self cases, the way that this manifests is that they are totally immersed in their experience of the world, lost in their experience, and they expect everybody to yield to them, yield to their desires, their needs, their timing, their demands, whatever it is. And they have no concept of other people's needs. And as a result, if you are paired with somebody that's in service to self, you will give and you will give and you will give, and they will take and they will take, and there are never any apologies. And unless you are looking out for your needs, they will stomp all over you, and you will become a shell of a person until there's nothing left. And when the vampire essence realizes that you have nothing left, this is now more in extreme cases, they'll move on to somebody else. Or when you start drawing boundaries and you start standing up for yourself or using your voice or your power to advocate for your needs, all of a sudden they're not going to like it because you're no longer an easy target and you're making it difficult. You're asking for things back. And at first, depending on the type of dynamic that you have, they're going to raise hell about it and make you feel bad for having needs in the first place. When you are in service to others, you give because there's pleasure in giving. And you think about other people's needs, other people's perspectives. It's so easy. It's just so easy to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and to help somebody have a nice day, just because you can tell by the way that they say hello. I'm imagining somebody at work, and this is like a close coworker, and they walk by and you have your usual greeting, hey, how's it going? And they're like, yeah, it's going. And even though they don't tell you more than that, you can feel the weight of their experience and you care. So you go out and you buy them a cookie or their favorite smoothie and you surprise them. No strings attached. You don't want anything from them. All you're doing is you're just taking care of their experience because you understand that they are heavy, and in effect, you want to be of service to them. You may see a beggar on the street and you might give them money, and you don't expect accolades for it. You don't expect anybody to notice. You're not doing it for any show or any reason except for the generous nature of your heart to give to somebody else. You might volunteer with children, or there's so many ways that this can be expressed. But where being of service to others is a detriment, and this is what I experienced when I was early in my spiritual awakening process. I've always had a generous heart, but I haven't always been as service to others oriented, for reasons that I'll get to a little bit later with some examples. And so as a result, I had this new level unlocked in me. And I made the mistake of assuming that other people on the spiritual awakening journey were of the same mindset of being service oriented to others. And what I quickly found out is that if I didn't speak up for my needs, even when working on projects with people that were in the spiritual awakening community and conscious people, if I didn't speak up for my needs and advocate for myself, then they weren't being taken care of. And it was my responsibility to take care of my needs. So I had to figure it out. And I feel really dumb about that now because it's so obvious, right? Nobody's a mind reader. And I am the person that's creating my own reality. And I shouldn't make so many assumptions about people going above and beyond to take care of my needs like I was trying to do for them. And I was doing it in this very imbalanced way. And it was a very important lesson for me. And deep down, I actually believe that the service to others and service to self, phenotypes and the archetypes, need to be in balance. And there's actually nothing wrong with being in service to self when you're living in a society where you're supposed to be sovereign. You're supposed to have autonomy. And you're supposed to be a creator in the world. Because if you're not in service to yourself, then you're expecting somebody else to create for you. You're expecting to give up your power and your control and your influence over your surroundings to somebody that's just going to take care of everything. And there are some relationships where you can do that. But for the most part, in just the average operating reality and realities that I've seen, it's actually to your benefit and to the collective benefit that we can rely on you to get dressed in the morning, to take care of your hygiene, to support yourself, to find your own relationship partner, and to navigate your career, to understand your desires and your wants, and to effectively, with empowerment, go out and do that, and then create for the collective, contribute to the collective. And when the service to self becomes imbalanced, what happens is that last part, adding value for other people and creating for other people, solving problems for other people, is totally not on their radar unless it serves them in some significant way. And because we're in Earth School, if you want to call it that, a training sim even, is another way to look at it. Because we are here with other beings of different levels of maturity, and this is not age dependent at all, but different levels of, I like to think of it in terms of sentience. And I actually believe that the service to self, and really it's actually a symptom of a bigger problem. And the problem is the level of sentience. The root problem, in my opinion, this is my take. I received a listener question about this. Thank you for the question, by the way. It's a great question. I believe that the reason that people talk about identifying those that are of service to themselves is because they wreak havoc on people's lives. And this isn't just human beings, this is also other entities as well. And if you have access to those other worlds, and as a result, when we think about how it impacts other people, it often impacts them with significant amounts of stress, trauma, pain, abuse, and horrific things. Now, the reason that I like to dig into the root cause of this is because I believe that sentience is the ability to understand how you fit into the whole. That's it. Sentience is the ability to understand how you fit into the whole. And when you are unconscious, what happens, and I might expand this definition later on, but for the sake of this argument, let's just keep it super simple. When you are unconscious, you don't really think about anybody except for yourself, unless you have been trained through your upbringing, through whatever class system, whatever culture that you have been exposed to. Like in the South, my grandmother taught me that we women needed to serve our significant others in a heterosexual partnership food and make it this like really big thing. Like part of our culture and manners was serving our boyfriends or our spouses and cooking and cleaning, right? And demonstrating our femininity in very specific ways. And so this is like a service to others that is trained, but it's a little bit duplicitous because it is almost a social mechanism. It's a social glue that's a little bit different from pure giving from the heart. And I don't know if we'll have time to get into that in this episode, but there is a distinction between false generosity, cultural upbringing, and genuine giving with no expectation, and spontaneous giving from a place of love. But I digress. So, unless you've been exposed to conditioning, when you're unconscious, you're only thinking about yourself. And even then, you're probably not even thinking that much, to be honest, because there's a lot that goes on under the hood of the inner workings of your mind and the structure of your personality that's really you're just a ball of reactions and emotions and desires. And sometimes it's all through shortcuts. I want, I have, I get, I take. And so very often, people who are unconscious are also of lower sentience, meaning they don't think about how they are impacting other people necessarily. They don't think about being in a collective and sitting down and manifesting for the collective. They manifest for themselves, right? And so it's a part of an evolutionary process of awakening to understand how they fit into this bigger picture. And as a result, you see people who construct societies with lower sentience really dominate based on their lack of understanding of how their behavior actually impacts, or even caring, because sometimes they do understand, but they don't care, how their behavior impacts future generations to come. And the more conscious somebody is, the more sentient, and there's a distinction between these two principles, the more sentient they are, the higher capacity they have to understand how they, themselves, the individual, fit into the collective and influence the collective. Whereas people who have lower sentience, again, not age dependent at all, there are some young people that are so conscious and super sentient, and there are some old people that, wow, yeah, I think your time has come because I don't know what you're doing here anymore. Anyway, so, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Not every old person lacks sentience. I don't mean to make that comparison, but traditionally speaking and generationally speaking, we have tended to awaken more at younger ages. And so now what we're seeing is a whole host of young people that are surpassing the level of consciousness that some of our ascended masters had a really long time ago. It's incredible. So, and we also see some older people that are vehicles of I want, I have, I take, and I don't care. And I don't care about you. I made it. I'm fine. I'm fine. I know the whole world is suffering, but figure it out. I know that, we contributed to all these problems, but, whatever. I'm going to go on my cruise. Not really, but there's this whole mindset of not caring, genuinely not caring about what is happening in the world and what is happening to future generations. And so as a result, those that have lower sentience, lower levels of awareness, they lack empathy. They lack perspective taking. They lack theory of mind. And this is why it is a symptom, not a cause. And that's just because they are at a lower developmental point in their cycle of evolution. And I say that confidently because I've been there. When I was unconscious, and this is why I said I would come back to this, when I was unconscious, I didn't believe that there was a higher power. I didn't believe that there was a collective. I was half nihilist. There was nothing after death. And I didn't really care about future generations. All I cared was about my day-to-day. Now, I was generous at heart with people who were in my inner circle, very generous. But if you weren't in my inner circle, then you practically didn't exist. And as a result, my compassion, even though it was very strong for animals and children, but my compassion for other people's experiences and challenges, because I overcame so many challenges in my life, I had a pull myself up by the bootstraps attitude and was like, well, if I did it, then everybody should be able to do it. And I worked hard, so I earned it. So sorry. And not understanding inequalities and systems of injustice. And I was very naive about that because I was locked into my own personal experience. And as part of my awakening journey, my eyes were open to many other facets of what was happening to other people and their experiences. And I began to care more and connect with their experiences. And that took that root compassion and generosity that I had for people in my inner circle, and it widened it to where now I manifest for the collective. I have been since my awakening. I've manifested so many things for the collective, for random people, for random strangers even, so I just say that to say that there's something about the expansion of consciousness and sentience that is not earthy year dependent, that helps you understand your impact in the world and how you fit into the world and how you fit into beyond this space-time constraint and how you fit into other lifelines and manifest for other people in other lifelines. One of the most service to self person that I knew was deeply troubled and very, very selfish. And when you understood his story, he grew up in a first-generation immigrant family in a country that they didn't speak the language at first. He was born there, so he became a native, but his parents didn't, and they really struggled. And he was in a medium-sized family, but he was born with a twin. And there wasn't enough food. And he was so gifted and so talented and had such a bright future ahead of him, but he didn't have the right support. And he was deeply, deeply troubled. And I'll never forget how he told me that he would eat, like trash off the street. Somebody would throw food on the street, a half-eaten apple, and he would pick it up and eat it because he was that hungry. And so as a result, it profoundly affected him even into adulthood. Even though his heart was generous, if you were in his inner circle, it often came with a heavy price because he never healed that wound of there never being enough. Not enough milk, not enough attention, not enough food, not enough anything. And so as a result, he was constantly thinking about how to take from people. He even told me himself he was obsessed with it. He was always trying to angle somebody out of something because he always felt that there was something about him that was unfair, that he wasn't being given to enough. And so when you understand that the service to self really is a symptom, then we start to understand how to fix it.